This Pondercast is brought to you by you. We are powered by listeners through Patreon. Please consider a monthly donation at patreon.com/Pondercast. Let's grow this together. Hello. Before we start, I'd like to give you a little explanation about what's going to happen here, and also for the podcast audience who are going to be listening to this later. Leslie Ting and I first met at the Banff Centre, and we were at a stillness residency, and when she was working on speculation at that time, and I heard it, and then when she asked me to collaborate at the Music Gallery, I was very excited. So what I said I would do is I would read speculation and think about it, and I would create something that I felt inspired by from what she did. And Leslie is also going to be playing music that she has created in this Pondercast. So Leslie, can you tell me how you've come up with this music for this?
So you'll be hearing 3 pieces, and they're all inspired by the first 2 pieces in speculation that you heard. So the first John Cage melody and the piano violin sonata in C minor by Beethoven. So the first little piece you'll hear is based on 2 measures in the Cage melody, and I've taken the material from those 2 measures and looped them and sort of not rearranged them, but done some creative. Anyway, you'll hear it. And then the second one, yeah. And then the second piece is I've taken 2 bars from the Beethoven sonata that are actually really busy bars, and I've reduced and abstracted them a bit, and they kind of create this repetitive bass that is interweaved with the Cage melody. And then the third piece is, again, kind of a mashup of Beethoven and Cage, and I've taken the double stop, so the spots in the Beethoven where 2 notes are playing at the same time, and they come at intense moments, and there's a lot of dissonance and tension, and I put it together with all of the long end-of-phrase quiet notes in Cage. So that's a very contrasting last one to end our show.
Perfect. Thank you, Leslie. Hi, I'm Lori Brown. Let's Pondercast. We all share the experience of having a mother. There aren't many other things that are so universally and completely shared. The moon, the sun, the stars, and breathing, and mothers. When you were born, your mother was your entire universe. Your body was hers, and hers was yours, and you connected beyond and before language simply by gazing into each other's eyes. The bond bonds. You shared so many firsts with Mother. First experience of love, disappointment, tenderness, power, anger, fear, pain, laughing. Every emotion was first experienced with Mother. And your first experience of sound, that first sound that you felt or heard was her heart, her rhythm, her body. This was your soundtrack. And as you were transforming inside that living womb, warm and red and soft and round, your mother was transforming from being a daughter to becoming a mother. And for all the experience we have with mothers, nothing really prepares us for becoming one. How odd is that? It's because I think we don't really remember the early days and the endless hours that our mothers spent holding us, feeding us in the darkness, gazing at each other, drinking each other in, literally. We don't remember all those first experiences and how our mother handled them. And it's too bad. I wonder how thoughts about our mothers would change if we could remember back to the early months when the world was just the two of us. But mothers cannot forget those early days, because becoming a mother changes everything about you. Your whole body becomes a mother. And it kind of happens without you, because, once that pregnancy thing gets rolling and is in motion, you just got to kind of stand back and watch it happen. You give up all control over your body, and it is so overwhelming. And yet, after the birth, after a while of living with this stranger that you have brought into the world, once life settles into a rhythm that makes you think, okay, I think I can handle this, you start to feel these surges of power develop, that bond that you have with your baby. It turns into this otherworldly, superhuman sensory connection and it just becomes part of who you are. You start to wake in the night a minute before your baby wakes. You sense their needs before they can tell you what they are. And as soon as you begin to understand the depth and power of that bond, as soon as you absorb it into your bones, it starts, little by little, to be taken away from you. I was teaching my daughter to ride her bike in the back alley, and that first time I watched her ride away all wobbly like, I burst into tears because she was leaving me behind. And I felt that bond stretch, and it hurt. The loss of the daughter to the mother and the loss of the mother to the daughter is the essential female tragedy, Adrienne Rich wrote. And it is a loss that happens to every mother and daughter 1,000 times in a lifetime. Our stories about our mothers are most often about what we needed and we didn't get from them, what they withheld, what they denied us. How many daughters feel like their mother was like some kind of dark energy force field in their lives, like dealing with weather only indoors? How many daughters wonder why their mothers use them as an outlet for their anger and frustration? What makes mothers like that? Mothers are capable of such amazing positive and negative energies. And how much of that negative, destructive streak exists because of the ways our mothers tried to conform to someone else's idea of what the perfect woman mother is. I could really swing into an hour-long rant about patriarchy right now, but I'm not going to. But patriarchy is what comes to mind. So how much has that pressure to conform, or let's use another word, how much has that oppression warped and undermined our mothers, turning them against themselves, had them thinking they would never be good enough, not just for their children, but for themselves as women? Did they end up turning against the people they loved the most, us? Well, we certainly were handy. We were always there. Our mothers have a story too, and one that we daughters take a long time to understand. And that's what they needed and never got. Mother-daughter stories are like a never-ending digital signal, all ones and zeros, bouncing back and forth, sometimes getting a reaction, sometimes missing the mark by a mile. I was conceived a block from here. It was a basement apartment at 1A Vermont Avenue, right up the street. And my mom made her transformation from daughter to mother right there. 13 months after I was born, we moved to a 2-bedroom apartment, and she had my sister. 2 babies, just 13 months apart. 2 babies in diapers, far away from all her family, no help, no support other than my father. And my dad used to smile when he'd tell the story about how right after my little sister was born, my mom would pull at his arm, begging him not to leave for work in the morning and leave him alone with these 2 babies. And he'd smile, and it was a family story, and we'd all laugh. But what I understand now is that my mother was really terrified. She felt completely inadequate. I try to piece together what my mother was like in those early days, because something bothers me. I don't remember my mother ever playing with me. You know, like just getting down on the living room floor and playing with toys. There are no pictures of her doing it. I've got lots of snaps of Dad down there singing and playing and holding us and laughing, but no Mom. And that came to me when I had children and was so keenly aware of the mountains of a time that I spent doing exactly that, down on the floor. But then I look at my own family pictures and the same thing is there. There are no pictures of me playing with my children when they're very young. Lots of pictures of their father, and that's because I took all the pictures. But I know why. I was fascinated with that scene because I was seeing my boyfriend, lover, husband become a father. It was happening right in front of my eyes. I had never even seen him pay attention to a baby before. And this person whom I was married to was transforming as well, and it was amazing. And I'm sure he felt the same about me. But after that first flush of photos at the hospital and early days at home, I somehow disappeared from pictures. A lover becoming a mother is a dangerous new development. I know the family pictures never tell the truth. I've returned home from family vacations, and there's not one of me in it. And so I think, will my children even remember that I was there? All these mountains of photographs of these seemingly motherless children. But I kind of comfort myself that I think, well, at least they were smiling at me when I pressed the shutter. I exaggerate. There are a couple photos. There's one with me with my arms up to my elbows holding a birthday cake in front of a 4-year-old. So there's one there. And there's another one of me from the waist down with a 2-year-old boy wrapped around my legs. I am still searching for early photos of me and my mom playing, having fun, doing something together, because I want hard evidence as I try for probably about the 10th time in my life to revise my mother-daughter story. Can we daughters ever really know the truth? I really want to try. And I need those photos because we really have no memories of life much before we learn to speak. Most of our memories kick in between 4 and 6, maybe earlier, particularly if you have a photograph to trigger them. That's just how our brains and memory work. And that means that all those hours and hours of early time with our mothers is lost. And that mothers can't be remembered for all that care and love and time is maddening and sad. What I do remember is my mother bathed me and dressed me and fed me and permed my hair and put on this stinging eczema medicine and stuck a thermometer in my mouth and comforted me when I was sick. I have memories of all those things, but no play, no fun. And I kind of panic when I think that maybe she didn't play with me. After all, it was the the Dr. Spock era, and I'd heard her say, if babies are warm, dry, and fed, they're okay. So when my sister had the first baby in our family, I paid close attention to how my mother handled her first grandchild. And the love in her eyes for that child made me ache. That baby made Mom happy in a way I had never seen before. She did it. She spread the blanket on the living room floor. She set some toys down, and the two of them would sit and play quietly and calmly. My mother always looking into Anna's eyes, watching and reading her expressions, mimicking her, changing toys when she seemed to lose interest. And I took pictures of them together. And it's there in the photos, plain as day. Was that how she looked at me? Could I command her attention and love like this grandchild did? I wish I had a picture. My mother died about a year after I gave birth to my daughter, so all I've got to rely on is unreliable memory. From adolescence on, my mother and I really struggled. But I fear that I have painted our whole time together with that uneasiness, that remoteness. But I'm also thinking that I started the remoteness. I mean, that's what daughters do at a certain age, right? Just one day, we stop listening and talking to our mothers. And mums ask, "What's wrong?" And we really couldn't answer, or we wouldn't answer. We just kind of shrug our shoulders. Was shutting Mom out a conscious thing or an unconscious thing? We became cold and withdrawn. We were told we were rude and disrespectful, and inwardly we rejoiced. We felt a kind of evil satisfaction from it. It was exactly the effect we were looking for. Because this was payback time. Because mothers carry their own wounds to the next generation, and we daughters absorb them. But eventually, most of us start to fight back. And we try to re-gift those wounds back to whence they came from Mom. And then we move away from home. And we enter the period of what I like to call the matrophobic years. Matrophobia, the fear of becoming one's mother, a dread that if one relaxes their guard, one will identify with her completely. And there are lots of examples. You move away from home and you find that your style of housekeeping is exactly the opposite image of your mother's. Of course, you never call her enough, according to her. You resist all her advice and help, except if you need something. So you go over and borrow her best perfume and that little clutch bag for a fancy party, all the while you're yelling at her to get off your back. And then she offers to come to your new shitty apartment and help you paint the kitchen. And the whole time she's in your place helping, you are terse and annoyed by every sweep of her paint roller. Your relationship is all push and pull. Your mother doesn't understand you, but that goes both ways. It is almost impossible for daughters to see beyond the mother they know to the outside forces in her life that have shaped who she is. A typical scene from the matrophobic years. She had to look up her mother's number. That's how long it's been. The sting of that was almost enough to make her back out of the promise she had made to call tonight. She'd already been stopped by a million reasons not to call over a million nights, and the pressure that created in her head was unbearable. She had to call. She found the number in her old address book. Her friends' entries on the same page as her mom's looked so different, They'd all been scratched out and changed many times. New cities, new countries even, children's names added as they were born. But her mother's name and address was pristine and unmoving. She needn't be reminded of the unchanging nature of her mother. Why hadn't she called her mom when she got the new job, or when she got back from that great trip in Europe, or when her brother was sick? Well, even though she thought about calling and it hurt her not to, she couldn't. She told herself, I'm protecting myself because she's never going to hear what she needs to hear, so why do it? The congratulations on the job, you deserve it. It wouldn't happen. Questions about her trip would not be forthcoming. Her mother never had any interest in her life or her brother's. Turning away from her mother had become a dance. Like magnetic opposites, she repeatedly spun away, dazed and defenseless after every attempt. She picked up the phone for one more round. Love is never returned the same way as it is given. Yet that's what we mothers and daughters want. So we veer between disappointment and hope over and over again. And for a mother, loving a daughter is an endless dance of holding tight and letting go. And mothers must learn to let go of the one person they want to stay close to forever, the one that we have our closest, most intimate relationship with, our daughters. And that letting go is the mother's ultimate sacrifice for her daughter. And it is a hard thing to do. That bond must learn to stretch over time and distance, and often the signal becomes intermittent. Daughters move away, or mothers move away. We lose sight of each other, and mothers really don't know how their children really are unless we can look them in the eye and watch how they move and reconnect with them on that subatomic physical level that is still active in us and so hard to shut down. Mothers must learn how to be okay with much less, and in the face of what has been, it all feels woefully inadequate. which is fitting, as that is how most mothers feel about their mothering, woefully inadequate. For all our lives, mothers and daughters live somewhere in the middle between wanting and being wanted, pushing and pulling through the decades until one of us suddenly lets go, leaving the other. Leaving the other, usually the daughter, to gather back the long length of suddenly very slack rope. And then we spend the rest of our lives recoiling that rope over and over and over again, which is what I do. My mother died at age 57, almost 30 years ago, so I've spent a long time trying to understand her and us. They say the quality of a mother's life is what she bequests her daughter. There has never been a clearer call for a mother to take charge of her own life and do what makes her happy, or at least try. Do it for your daughter. And my mother was never happy. And I have had to learn how to be happy myself. She could not teach me that. Motherless daughters find themselves at big moments in their lives thinking, I wish my mom could see this. But even more so, I think, I wish my mother could have done this. Had a career that fed her artistic talents because she should have been an artist. Realize her thirst for adventure and travel. But mostly, I wish for her the ability to let go of a debilitating quest for perfection. Those were the times she lived in, such was the institution of motherhood. Many of the forces that made her an unhappy mother came from the world, not from within her. How would the world need to change to have made your mother happier? How would you remake it? End the fear and hatred we have for our own bodies? Win the battle to own our own bodies, to be able to choose motherhood on our own terms and to feel safe, equal pay, equal support at home. If those things could happen, well, first off, that would be a revolution. And it should be a revolution because mothering affects everything. Sexuality, intimacy, politics, power, community, work, intelligence, love, empathy, the way we treat the earth, the way we treat each other. I mean, imagine your mother in a world like that. If she could have been all the woman she wanted to be, wouldn't you love to meet that mother? The world moves too quickly in many ways and achingly slow in others. Things have progressed from my mother's time, but for my daughter, I want a motherhood revolution.